Hey, I wanted to help you to do this really big paper that you have. 10 to 20 pages is a lot, but it's actually not that complicated if you break it down. And so I have written, as you know, I've written papers that are 20 to 25 minimum, and that those are multiple papers per semester per class. And then usually the last paper is a 50-page paper. And the one of the things that I've learned to do over the years is to actually break these papers down into smaller papers that are much more manageable. So the first thing I would suggest is that you get a drink of choice, have a cup of coffee or tea or whatever it is you drink, a beer. Don't probably drink more than one or two beers, otherwise it's not going to make sense after a while. But have a drink of some sort. Put your cell phone on silent, set your stuff aside, and then just right now we're just breaking down an outline. Super simple, breaking down an outline. It could be the one thing you do today. Don't touch the paper for the rest of the time, and that's okay. But what I want you to do is I want you to consider every paper you write, and this one included, want to consider how can I break this down into individual papers. A bunch of individual papers. And the way that this is set up, it actually lends itself perfectly to this. So you have to write this paper. It says, my thing says 20 pages. I think you said that he had updated it to 10 maybe. But okay, fine, 10 to 20 pages. This could easily be a 20-page paper based on what he has. But if we look at it, the structure, this is actually like 13 really small, 13 to 15 really small papers is what it actually is. And you want to think about it like that because that's less overwhelming. So the first paper, what I would say, is the introduction. The introduction is just a summary, an overview, as he says, of the 5 practices and the 10 commandments of effective leadership. That's very simple, and it says explain the relevance and principles and of setting goals. Like, why is that important? That's one page. That's a one-page paper. That's just a very basic breakdown of why this stuff is important to know. Okay, one paper. That's it. One page. The next thing is to do the 5 practices. So if you look at the 5 practices, all you have to do, as he says here, is you take them, you look at them. It says model the way, inspire the shared vision, challenge the process, enable others, encourage the heart. I haven't read it, but again, very simple. That's paper number 2. Paper number 2 is probably a 2 to 3 page, single spaced at the most, breakdown summary of the 5 practices. He has some specific things he wants you to have, but that's 2 papers. Now, rather than having a 10 to 20 page paper, you now have 2 very small papers. Next is the 10 commandments, where he says he wants you to explain each of them and address the 2 essentials, explaining, referencing, and citing examples from the chapter. Now you actually have 10 mini 1-page, maybe 3/4-page papers. Again, very simple. You can set yourself a timer moving forward and say, okay, you don't have to pound out a 20-page paper. You just have to take some time to do a 3/4-page paper every day. And that's it, because you have to do 1 commandment, and 10 commandments is, if you do 1 page each, that's not a lot. And then also, too, once you do the references, if you use Turabian or Chicago style or MLA, I don't know what he requires. I always use Turabian. Your quotes are actually indented and spaced, and that takes up a little bit more space. And it's legit. You're not faking it. It just is what it is. So once you use examples and everything, you're easily 1 page each. So now you are already at, if you do 1 page each, you're at 13 to 14 pages. And then lastly, he has here is goal setting. So it's not last, actually, it's almost last. Goal setting. He said 1 year, 3 to 5 year, 10 year, and then action steps. So this is where I would suggest that you also make sure the goals are SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, because what's the point of having a goal if it's not relevant to what you're trying to accomplish, and time bound. So that those are SMART goals, and those are really important. And specifically with this paper, I mean, this is just good old-fashioned learning, and this should be exciting. You get to decide, okay, what do I want to do in a year? What do I want to do in 3 to 5 years? What do I want to do in 10 years? And success, if you read books on business and psychological studies on success and people achieving their ends and goals, people who achieve their ends and goals always are thinking 3 to 5 years out at least. In one study I had read, they talked about like drug addicts, and drug addicts only think of goals 1 to 2 days out. And that just is a kind of a little bit of a primer to understand that success in life is attached to future orientation, which is goals, future goals. So anyway, make sure the goals are SMART as you're writing them. But again, goal setting. That is a 2-page at least paper by itself. Goal setting. Completely separate from the rest of it. You treat it as its own little thing. It's not a continuation. It's its own paper. Next one, reflection and critical analysis. This is where you get to complain as much as you'd like. Within reason. Don't be rude, because you know what? Professors don't want people to be rude to you. Don't be rude to your professor. Reggie's a good guy. But this is where you get to reflect on the project, get to reflect on what you've learned, and you get to make some criticisms and analyze some things and have a little bit of your own personal input, which should be very easy. And then finally, you have your conclusion. And your conclusion, again, you're talking 1 page, half a page. This is just now that I've studied the stuff, I understand the points, I've set some future goals. This is what I'm going to do next. Boom. So now you have, I'm guessing 15 to 16 really small papers. And that's it. Really small papers. So if that is helpful, I hope it is, but you can use this for the rest of your life also. Here's a little helpful hint for the future. Keep this paper. Do not trash this paper. Keep this paper, open a file on Google Docs, put it in there, call it college papers, and keep this paper. Then when another class brings up anything relevant to what you've studied, you just take that and you drop whatever nuggets of wisdom are in that and move it right into another paper. There's no reason for you to be making new stuff if you've already studied something. In my doctoral program and master's degrees, you're encouraged to continue to use the same papers over and over again as you expand and study more and get more in depth. So ideally, by the time you're done, when you're doing a big thesis, the thesis, you've already got most of the research done. Then you're just pounding out the paper. And in that case, again, you take a 120 to 150 pages and you break it into smaller papers. Anyway,